Good evening and a very warm welcome to your English news package with radio and television Tonga for the hour. Making headlines, Prime Minister respects the Court of Appeal's judgment in dismissing 3 cabinet ministers' pleas. Today marks the International Youth Day for 2022, and the Tonga Institute of Science and Technology yesterday signed an agreement of partnership with the Habitat for Humanity New Zealand. We'll have these and more stories later on in the bulletin, together with sports to wrap up with the latest weather update. Now with the stories in details. The Prime Minister Honourable Huakavameliku yesterday accepted the decisions of the Court of Appeal in the case of 3 cabinet ministers who lost their seats in Parliament. Mark Ake tells you more.
During a press conference, the Prime Minister, Huakavameliku, said that the 3 cabinet ministers have made their resignation letters and they are currently working on it. This is due to the dismissal of their appeal by the Court of Appeal, who declared their elections void. Although the appeal court set aside some of the bribery offenses, other bribery offenses were upheld. Huakavameliku stated in a press release that all due processes were followed and 3 cabinet ministers used the opportunities available to them by law. He said that they accept, respect, and abide the judgment by the Court of Appeal while moving forward with its administration. He added that although it is tough losing 3 senior members of cabinet at this time, they will have to find replacements and continue with the work that needs to be done. Huakavameliku personally thanked the 3 cabinet ministers on behalf of the government for all their services to the kingdom. The 3 cabinet ministers include Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for MEDEC, Boasday Finance Minister Tafu, and Minister of Internal Affairs Sengsta Saulala. However, it is understood that the Speaker of Parliament issued a writ of election for by-elections for Tongatapu 4, 6 and 7 to be held on the 3rd of November.
Today, Friday the 12th of August, commemorates the International Youth Day for 2022. The theme for this year is Shaping Our Future Together. The Ministry of Internal Affairs organized the programs to mark the International Youth Day for this year, and the Minister, Honourable Sengsta Saulala, was present as the guest of honour, his last responsibility on his role as a minister. During his remarks, he encouraged the youth about the importance of time. While I was in USB for further studies, the last year of my classmate before graduation, a car ran over her in front of USB campus and she died. So I had in my thoughts a question of the importance of our lives after all of the sacrifices in studies and then died. I then had a thought, while I was still young, that I would do something to help out my family, church, and also my community. I went and supported the media and I became the president of Tonga Media Association. I then supported rugby and became the chairman of the board of rugby and others. I encourage you all youths to make use of your time while you are still young. It is understood that there were speech competitions and drawings organized by the Ministry of Internal Affairs to mark International Youth Day together with its theme, so prizes will be awarded to winners during today's program. Meanwhile, there will be a showcase of traditional Tongan attire worn by models and other programs in the afternoon. The Tonga Institute of Science and Technology of the Ministry of Health signed an agreement of partnership with the Habitat for Humanity New Zealand to provide build-back safer training to carpentry students and to rebuild houses that were mostly affected from the tsunami earlier this year. Mark Age again with the details.
This agreement is now in place after the Habitat completed training to 20 students of the Institute, in which only these students and their tutors will be working on building houses in Tongatapu, Ha'apai, and Eua. The consultant project manager in country, Katrina Fatiaki, says that Habitat taught these students in training on how to build a house that can withstand any cyclone that may occur in the future. The 2 organizations will also work together to find ways that the BBS training can be delivered to community participants. Approximately 12 new homes for vulnerable families affected by the tsunami will be built by the students from the Institute. Fatiaki added that Habitat will provide additional technical support and project management to Tonga Institute of Science and Technology as part of its partnership. It will provide a PBS refresher course to the students and deliver a train and trainer module to enable tutors to teach others in PBS skills going forward, and for students to be able to take these skills back to their communities as well. PBS is a program used by Habitat internationally to ensure community members gain an understanding of building and water and sanitation hygiene skills. The Institute of Science and Technology will also contribute to ongoing habitat research on making better use of local materials to rebuild after a disaster as a way of strengthening a community's ability to respond more quickly and in a more effective way, as building materials are very expensive these days. Habitat has been working in Tonga with Caritas Tonga for about 8 years in building and completing house repair in Tongatapu and Eua that were most affected by Cyclone Kita and Harold, but this is the first partnership formed with the Institute of Science and Technology in the Ministry of Education and Training. Meanwhile, the group CEO of Habitat for Humanity New Zealand, Alan Thorpe, and his team paid a courtesy call to the Prime Minister at the Prime Minister's office this Monday to brief him about the project and its implementation. Thorpe and his team already left for New Zealand after the completion of the signing agreement yesterday. Funding of this project is provided by the New Zealand government and Habitat.
The Minister of Trade and Economic Development mentioned during a press conference yesterday there's hope for next week the petroleum prices will decrease starting next week. Dr. Latu, the Trade Minister, says retailers will be paying 14% less per litre for petrol, but the details will be announced next week. Latu adds the average prices internationally from Singapore. They are the ones who calculate the daily prices of petroleum. In that case, they also provide the average price for crude oil. Petrol, kerosene, diesel, and gas are produced in the distillation of crude oil. In the meantime, the price of crude oil increased. Secondly, the prices of transporting the crude oil from Singapore via Fiji then Tonga. Additionally, the crisis between Ukraine and Russia has an impact on the prices, as well as Russia is one of the main oil exporters in the world. It is understood that Tonga's economy is affected due to COVID-19, including January devastation, but Latu says that the government is doing its best to assist the people during the recovery period as petroleum prices and electricity tariff increase. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Honourable Huakavameliku, says the government are looking into the issues as they are working closely with the Tonga Power Limited and Renewable Energy Division of the Ministry of MADEC to empower projects for the renewable energy to help decreasing price of electricity, which is operated by petroleum. Honourable Huakavameliku adds currently Tonga renewable energy is at 14% and they are looking forward to 2025 to increase to 50%. And the marching parade of the 70th Basic Recruit of His Majesty's Armed Forces today saw recruit Raymond Akaola named as the best overall for the 70th Recruit of 2022. Mark Age again with more on the story.
Right. General salute.
Uraki, Maui aki whareloa, hapai, ha te iho, kolowai Tongatapu, Riguluti, Raymond Akawola.
In addition to the prizes presented, recruit Raymond Akawola was awarded the best recruit for indoor subjects and field training. During the program, the guest of honor, Lieutenant Colonel Lord Ve'ehala, presented 6 prizes to winners of each respective field. Best physical fitness was awarded to recruit Siosifa Now. With drill activities, the award went to recruit Feita Vaka. Best in Marksmanship was awarded to recruit Siale Malani, and the most progressive award was received by recruit Osai Taweli of Malapo and Fasimoyafi. Lieutenant Colonel Lord Vehala highlighted in his keynote address that established staff members must comply with the Army's orders and do their work to the best of their abilities. Meanwhile, the best overall of the 70th recruit, Raymond Agawola, encouraged his fellow recruits that victory and satisfaction is the product of hardship, and molding their lives requires patience and endurance. This is part of His Majesty's Armed Forces, who underwent tough training and discipline that will make them become better serving officers with abilities to secure and protect the kingdom.
That's our local news with radio and television Tonga News for the hour with Tonga Development Bank.
Tonga Development Bank does not charge you levy for using its currency exchange or DD services.
Sports is up next with Mark Ake, and it is kindly sponsored by Pacific Timber and Hardware.
Tonga will make history this November when the Tonga National Basketball Association fields their first ever basketball women's team in the Polynesian Cup this November. The association, or TNBA, has launched a recruit program for female players in the kingdom as part of the selection process for the national women's team. The TNBA spokesperson, Josiah Vaipuna, told radio and television Tonga Sports that the women's team will join the men's team in the Polynesian Cup on the 1st to the 5th of November.
This Polynesian Cup is the qualification games for the Pacific competition to be held next year. So this is the first time that we've managed to have to put together a women's team to an international competition in basketball. Previously, in 2018, there was a Polynesian Cup held in Samoa. That was the first time in recent times that we were able to put a men's team. And we were fortunate enough to qualify to the Pacific Games in 2019.
Vaipuna also mentioned that the men's and women's team will feature both local and international players.
Players overseas, they have access to better facilities, better training, but the view of the board is that we should still include our local players because we think that would encourage our local players and our youth and kids to start playing basketball.
Vaipuna explained the TNBA's efforts in developing basketball locally.
So basketball hasn't been revived, and then over the years it hasn't been really progressing that much. But recently there's been, I think it's mainly due to the Matema Tonga fever, and people want to get involved in sports and to represent the country. So there's been a big push in promoting basketball for those who are passionate about basketball. So the board been doing a lot of activities. There's been a few competitions in country. There's also been clinics and training. But at the same time, it should be noted that there's some schools here in Tonga that have their own basketball program, which is encouraging. But yeah, I think basketball involvement is on the rise.
Tonga's men's team joined the 3x3 competition in Singapore last month, a first for Tonga. Moving on, Parramatta Centre Will Pensini refuses to shut down talk of a near-future switch to rugby union, as Rugby Australia sets sights on close mate Joseph Suwali for a cross-code switch. Both Pensini and Suwali played rugby for the King's School in Sydney growing up before being snatched away. Suwali playing his juniors for the South Sydney Rabbitohs, while Pensini moved straight into the Eels system. Despite the fast approaching deadline on November, Pensini won't be making a call on his future during the current season. And Richie Mo'unga will start at first 5 in place of Bodden Barrett as one of 4 changes to the All Blacks' starting 15 made by New Zealand head coach Ian Foster for the Rugby Championship clash with South Africa this Sunday. Barrett fell heavily on his neck during last week's 26-10 loss to the Springboks, and although he trained this week, he will start from the bench. That defeat was the All Blacks' heaviest to the Boks in 94 years. However, here is the team that will face the Boks in their second bout. Fullback Jody Barrett, wings Will Jordan and Caleb Clark, center combination Rico Ioane and David Havili, halfback combination Richie Mo'unga and Aaron Smith, back row Artie Salvea, Captain Sam Kane and Shannon Frizzell, Second row, Scott Barrett and Sam Whitelock. Front row, Tyra Lomax, Samsoni Tauke Aho, and Ethan DeGroots. Replacements, Cody Taylor, George Bauer, Fletcher Newell, Tupo Va'i, Akira Ioane, Finlay Christie, Paulin Barrett, and Quinto Baya. The game will kick off at 10 minutes past 4 early Sunday morning, Tongan time.
Now with the latest weather update issued from Tonga's Met Office at Wha'amoto.
From the current weather situation, a trough lies to the east of the group and it is expected to move away from the group this evening. Meanwhile, a cool southerly wind flow prevails over most part of Tonga. Here is our forecast for tomorrow. For the Newers, light to moderate south to southeast winds, fresh at times. Mainly fine apart from cloudy periods with isolated showers. For Vava'u, Hapai, Tongatapu and Ewa, light to moderate south to southwesterly winds, fresh at times. Mainly fine apart from cloudy periods with few showers. Lowest temperature for tonight will be around 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. Highest temperature for tomorrow will be around 27 to 30 degrees Celsius. From the Marine Weather Bulletin, here is our warning for coastal waters. A strong wind warning and smoke craft advisory remains in force for Tongatapu, Ewa, Telekitonga and Telekitokelau coastal waters. Here is our forecast to midnight tomorrow for Tonga coastal waters. For Tongatapu, Ewa, Telekitonga and Telekitokelau coastal waters. South to southwesterly winds 15 to 20 knots, then rising up to 25 knots at times. Moderate to rough seas up to 3 meters. For Vava'u and Hapai coastal waters, south to southwesterly winds 10 to 15 knots, rising up to 20 knots at times. Moderate seas up to 2.5 meters. For the Newers coastal waters, south to southeasterly winds 10 to 15 knots, rising up to 20 knots at times. Moderate seas up to 2 meters. From the tide predictions, high tide will be at 10 minutes to 8 p.m. this evening. Low tide will be at 10 minutes to 2 a.m. tomorrow morning. Sun in the moon, sunrise will be at 5 minutes past 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Moonset will be at 5 minutes to 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. From the 6 days forecast for Nuku'alofa, mainly moderate to fresh east to southeast winds, strong at times for next week. Mainly fine apart from cloudy periods with showers for Monday next week, and the maximum temperature will be around 25 to 28 degrees Celsius. Minimum temperature will be around 20 to 22 degrees Celsius. Relative humidity will be 70 to 85%.
And that concludes tonight's English news package. But before we part, here's one final look at tonight's top stories. Prime Minister respected the Court of Appeal's judgment in dismissing 3 cabinet ministers' pleas. Today marks the International Youth Day for 2022, and the Tonga Institute of Science and Technology yesterday signed an agreement of a partnership with the Habitat for Humanity New Zealand. And that's it for tonight. Thank you for your company. I'm Ali Sitabo. Have a blessed evening.